one of the big reasons for looking at different levels of care that are needed is because, as you all are very well aware, sexual addiction is very, multifaceted. It's a behavioral disorder, right? There's a behavior factor that gets repeated, and there's compulsion. It's a brain disorder, right? We've talked about that a little bit in the past, how there's a lot of neurochemical stuff going on, neural pathways being activated and reactivated and formed, and the pleasure and reward center being activated, and so that needs to be treated. It's a spiritual disorder, right? You guys have seen it. Rich talking about being on the front lines. I mean, that's a spiritual battle, and there's truth in that. It's a sexual disorder, right? That's the obvious one. Everyone gets that one. It destroys that individual's sexual health and then their sexual health with others. And then it's also an intimacy disorder, and this is a big category, right? This has not only to do with intimacy in the sense of that person and that significant relationship they're in with their spouse. It has to do even with a relationship, man to man, and a good friend that they might have, and being able to be open and vulnerable and share deeply. Okay, now the next one. So really there's this continuum of care, right? And I just kind of wanted to spell it out so we're all on the same page. And maybe there's little nuances here that would still fit in somewhere else that I didn't quite call out. But it ranges anywhere from like an accountability partner, where maybe it's a kid in high school who goes, oh yeah, I'm going to see if a friend and we're going to try and keep each other accountable. And that's great. That's a good thing to do. And that's something that's needed even way down the road. There's support groups, right, which all of you represent and are doing a great job at, is filling that place for people. And then it would go to individual therapy and group therapy, right? Kind of another layer up. Then we have what we call an intensive outpatient program, and Andrew's going to talk more about what those are and stuff down the road. Some of you might be familiar, but basically it's a very intensely focused, all day long for a week or two program. And then the most intense, the most invasive is inpatient, which Rich was alluding to, of going and checking in somewhere and staying there for 30, 60, 90 days and working on stuff. This happens all across the addiction field with alcohol, with drugs, with with sexual addiction as well. There's inpatient treatment centers. So I did want to define real quick, I had a hard time listing this one out. There's kind of again, more things that I probably left off, and maybe I didn't say things so well, but basically just trying to help you guys understand maybe the difference between like a group like you might run and a therapy group. Because a lot of people ask that question, whether they're clients of ours or we've had you guys ask it. So, one of the things that's different about a therapy group is typically we have a pretty small cap size to maybe 6 to 8 people total. So that really helps focus on the amount of time that each person gets to share, that kind of stuff. Obviously it's led by a professional mental health care provider, and so that allows us to dig deeper, to maybe ask some more probing questions, to maybe work with multi-levels of maybe they're bringing some level of anxiety or depression along with their addiction, and we're able to sort through both of those. Often it's just FYI, it's comprised of book work, time for check-ins, and group exercises as well. That might involve some deeper work within those group dynamics. And then another thing that we often do in our groups is we'll have therapeutically appropriate and guided crosstalk. So one person might be able to ask a question of one of the other people in the group, and we can guide and shape that and make sure it's appropriate, and then through that really get some neat interactions and growing and ping-ponging and depth there that even us as the therapists wouldn't have brought up or known to go to without another person in the group bringing up that stuff. So I'm going to go over a really helpful assessment tool that we use day in and day out. This is a free one. It's online. It takes about 10 minutes to do. And maybe some of you are familiar with it. The website for it is recoveryzone.com. This is one of Dr. Karn's websites. And the assessment is called the Sexual Addiction Screening Test, or the S.A.L.T. And it's important to use the online one because it's constantly updated. They keep tweaking it and fine-tuning it, and it's been tested and retested, and There's a lot of people that use it, so it's very accurate. So I'm going to run you through just real quick, what it looks like, what the scores look like. Like I said, it just gets into a lot of questions around sexual addiction. There's another assessment out there called the LAST, the Love Addiction Screening Test. You want to look up that one too if you're running into someone who maybe it's more relationship focused, serial relationships, and there's a more focus on love, or if they're coming to you, maybe self-reporting, hey, I've got a love addiction, can you help me with that? The answer would be yes, you can, and then 2 is you could go and do that. I don't have that up here because there's not actually an online one, there's just like a paper one, and it's adapted from Pia Melody's work with Dr. Carnes. So the sexual addiction screening test, this is the results. I went through and tried to answer one just as most of my clients do. So this is kind of a composite answer, and this is what I'd say is about the average of what we run into. And so you notice here, this is the one-page results you get. It shows you these graphs, right? And maybe a lot of you are tuning out already, going, oh no, that looks complicated, what's going on? But it's actually fairly simple. All you're looking for is 2 numbers. This number, 6, it says it right here. Most addicts, this is the whole statistical variations and probabilities and stuff through, it's probably up to 500,000 people have taken this, say that 6 and above is what most all sex addicts score. So when you get the results back, and it'll say this all in words as well, but you'll see that somebody that's in your group is going to be above a 6, generally. It's pretty rare when people below that are seeking out help and end up in a group. So this one that I did, this composite one, scored an 11. Right, so right there, in the middle. And what these graphs are showing is that people that aren't sex addicts, their average is 2. They peak at 2. That's most people will get a 2 on that. Now, clinical, so that's the dotted line. These are for the sex addicts who have been in treatment, who have taken this over and over and over. The average ends up being around 16, 17. So way up there, out of 20 total, sorry. But don't be fooled, 7 is still significant. 7 is still important. 8 is still important. Just know, 6 or above. That's the main thing with this. That's pretty much it on how to read it. Now what I've done though is I've tied together a little bit of a frame of reference for you guys too, so that you have something to go on. So say you do, tell a guy or a woman, hey, go on, take this. And let me mention too, this is appropriate for everybody. It's not only men, it's not only women, it's not, it's normed for all different populations of sex addicts. So again, I've kind of created just a general reference of what scores equal what level of treatment, typically. It's really a rule of thumb. So typically, around the 6 to 8 range, we find that people are good with, I mentioned accountability partners, they're good with support group, like being in your groups, and that's going to be a successful thing generally. They are not going to need a whole bunch of really in-depth hard work. Then 8 to 11 is where it gets a little thicker. Gets a little more in depth. They're going to need accountability partners, they're going to need regular support group time with you guys, and they're going to need some individual therapy. They're going to need to get that ball rolling and really, flesh that out, see what level of individual therapy they're needing. Then 11 to 15, again, accountability partners, regular support group. Now definitely weekly individual. For sure that's needed at this point, along with weekly group therapy as well. Again, these are rules of thumb, but we've found like this is pretty typical for the clients that we work with, what they see, what they need, and what's successful for them.
Just to add something to that. So this doesn't mean this has to be that way, but a lot of times people that are in the wrong level of care, like let's say they score a 15, but they're just in the support group, they'll just keep relapsing. You'll keep seeing them relapsing. So you'll notice there's something wrong here, But rather than having them fail a bunch of times in the beginning, if you do a good assessment up front with this, you can have a better, treatment plan for them. Like, actually, we're not going to have you keep failing in the beginning. We're going to get you to the right level of care from the beginning.
Yeah. And if they are already in your group and failing, have them take this. If they haven't taken this, have them go on there, and you might be able to go, oh, aha, good. Now I know what's going on. Need a little bit more for them. So then this last range, it's kind of a bigger range because there's a lot here. You know, we do run into a good amount of clients in this range as well, and they're needing everything, pretty much the whole list, you know? And there's nothing wrong with that, it's just what's required, right? It's a little bit like, you know, the AASA, NA 90 and 90, right? That, hey, you're needing something a lot, all the time. So,
Which is 90 meetings in 90 days.
yeah.
Yeah, in case you don't know.
So we're saying, you know, at least once a week individual. You know, Rich mentioned he was going twice a week for individual. I know it sounds like a lot, but sometimes that's really what's needed. And especially if someone's wanting to really have a good start and be successful. Weekly therapy group as well, plus the support groups, plus accountability partner. And then I put possibly the IOP, intensive outpatient program, or even inpatient. You know, it really depends on, again, what's needed. And I did put another thing to note is multiple support groups, right? So yeah, they're going to yours once a week, but you're going to need to network, right, which we'll have later, and get them going to somebody else's too, and maybe somebody else's. They might need 3, 4 groups, plus you know, group therapy, plus their individual work to really be successful. So none, you know, I think we can all agree that none of us are the end-all be-all for this. No one of us can really handle and fully care for someone going through addiction. So now I'm going to jump over to Andrew for a bit.
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about, so what are the indicators of an insufficient level of care? So if you have someone in your group that is, like how would you know, like this person needs more care, he's not in the right level or she, they need more. And so some of the things you'd be looking for, let's say they're attending a weekly group or maybe even 2 groups a week, but they're not getting sobriety. They just, you know, that's that person that keeps coming back to the group and keeps, you know, reporting, I slipped. And so after you see that for a while, and all of, you know, individual clients with me too keep coming back, and then it's time to say, okay, well, let's look at, you know, there's something you don't have enough support, there's not enough structure for you, there's not a sufficient level of care, so we need to up the level of care. Another thing would say, just like I said, you know, consistent relapse, so there's just relapse after relapse. Another indicator for you to look at is if there's real high-risk behaviors. People that are engaged in, you know, sadomasochism, real dangerous anonymous sex. You'll find people hooking up in random bathrooms at parks or going to bathhouses or Craigslist hookups or, you know, all these different things that are higher and riskier or violent and unusual. So I'm sure you guys likely see this in your groups as well. People that are doing dangerous things that are, you know, unusual or violent, or, you know, that's when you know this is a little bit beyond the standard level, you know, of care. And usually people with this type of behavior, often they have most sex addicts in general, but the riskier it gets, oftentimes you see more trauma in their background. So when you see lots of trauma and you see these types of behaviors, you should have a little red flag that goes off in your mind, like, I think this person needs to get into some therapy, they need to get into, you know, we need to up the levels of care like Cory laid out. Can you back up one more? Yeah. Also people that are problematic group members, so you might have that group member who's just very hard to contain. They're, you know, running all over the group, they're talking away, and it's just hard for you, you know, as a leader to contain them. They might be better in an individual therapy setting. They might be better in a therapeutic group setting where the therapist is a little bit more, you know, just well-trained in managing groups. And then, like I said, the highly traumatic background. So someone who comes to you with a lot of trauma, they've had all kinds of, you know, issues happening in their life that just need a deeper level of work in their life. Okay. So now one of the questions is like, well, if I have a person in my group and I see that they need a higher level of care, how do I motivate them? Sometimes people just don't want to do that, right? That's the tricky part. You can't, you know, it's hard. We try everything, right? We try to, you know, arm twist, we try to encourage, we try to do all kinds of things, and I do too, and sometimes people just don't want to move. You know, so this is one technique that I like. It's called motivational interviewing, and it's a therapeutic technique, and I'm not specially trained in it, but I think it's something that we can all do. It's rather than coming at the person from like a judgmental type of critical approach, like, you know, you need to do this, it's not working, but, you know, this kind of top-down approach. It's more of a questioning and questioning approach, help people to see the need for them to change on their own. So it's really non-judgmental. So it's more like, how do you feel you're doing in recovery? And the person can say, well, I'm not doing that great, am I? It's obvious. Rather than you saying, you're really failing, you're really not doing a great job. They come to it from themselves, how do you see these behaviors impacting your life? Well, I guess my wife's still really mad at me. We're separated. I guess my job's not doing very well. I'm spending all kinds of money. Well, is this what you want for yourself, or is this what you want? And well, no, not really. That's why I'm here at the group. Well, what are your goals? It's kind of this questioning approach. It's very simple and basic, but I find that when I do it that way, and I just ask a bunch of questions that are pretty basic, just about helping them think through, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Am I happy with this? And what do I want to do to change? So it's a different way that people come to the insight through themselves, rather than you telling them. Because when we tell them in a more of a kind of a dogmatic way, people tend to resist, right? They don't want to because we're telling them. But when they come to it themselves, they're much more motivated. So that's one technique and you can look it up on on Wikipedia, and there's all kinds of information about motivational interviewing. It's pretty simple. There's books on it, but it's not really complicated. It's just asking questions in a non-judgmental way, so that they come to the conclusion themselves. And another thing to think about as you're doing this is to think about there are stages of change in people. I'll find myself getting frustrated at somebody who's maybe come in and said they need help for therapy, and they want to get over sex addiction, and I've done all the motivational interviewing, I've done all the recommendations that they need a higher level of care, they need to go to a group, and they just want to come to me the whole time, and I say, no, you need to get into a group, there's one at the Rock, there's one here, there's one there, and they don't do it. And but then I have to remember too that people are at different stages of change in their journey, and we can't always expect everybody to be at the stage where they're going to pull the trigger immediately. So it's mostly for you to know that there's a top stage here is pre-contemplation. It's before the person's even really contemplating changing. They just have a feeling that there's something not right here. I don't really like it, but I'm not really changing yet. And then there's the contemplation phase, which is the next one. That's the person who starts to think, do I really want this for myself? Is this a lifestyle that I really like? And they start contemplating it, but they haven't done anything about it. And then comes the determination stage. And that stage is, okay, I'm determining to make a change. And usually there's a crisis in their life. We call that, through Patrick Carnes' material, the crisis decision stage. That's when the person's wife's about to leave them, or their husband's going to leave them, or there's some crisis going on. They're going to get fired. They've caught a disease, or something. That's that determination. Okay, I need to change. The next one is the action phase. That's where they get beyond just the crisis decision. I need to do something. They actually call you guys and say, hey, I need to get in your group, or they call me, or they're actually doing something about it. And then there's the maintenance stage. That's where they're actively gotten the rhythm flowing. They've gotten some sobriety developed. They're doing this maintenance phase where those are the active members in your group that are coming weekly. They're doing everything outside that they need to do, and they're getting some sobriety. Now, people may relapse along the way, but you can enter and re-enter at any stage of this. So people may be in the action stage, relapse. They may go back to just living in their addiction again, go back to pre-contemplation, or maybe in this stage where they just kind of give up and they'll fall back. So the key is for you is to think about, well, I've done everything I can do. I've tried to motivate this person. I've tried to maybe strong arm this person. I've tried to recommend things. I've had people talk to them, and they're not there yet. Well, it's important, but all people that do that, and they're paying me every week, and I'm like, why are you paying me money to come here and not do anything, not listen to what I'm telling you? Well, I have to remember, well, maybe they're just contemplating still. They haven't really got to that next level. It'll click in. You see it. People will click at one point, and they'll decide, I'm going to do something different. So remember that as you're working with people, that everybody's got their own stage of change, and people change at different times, and we just got to remember that we're pushing everybody along at a little different rate. So this is a little bit more in depth about what an intensive outpatient program is. Cory talked about, we have groups, accountability partner, individual therapy, and group therapy, and then comes the intensive outpatient therapy program. What that is it's like a 1 to 2 week intensive program. It's where someone would come for 8 hours a day for 2 weeks. So usually they're not working with a group of people together, and they're really focused on doing maybe of what you do in 6 months of therapy or a group, you would do it in a 2-week period. So it's very intense. There's usually group therapy, individual therapy, 12-step meetings, workshops, all day long. And so it's very highly structured. It brings the individual away from the daily distractions of life. So if you've got someone in your group who's just, they're doing everything on that list and they're still not getting that recovery, maybe if they can, to say, hey, there's a 2-week intensive program that you need to go to so you can get out of your environment that's maybe drawing you, sucking them back down. Say, let's focus on this. Let's put some real intensity into this. So it's a high structured environment, and people that are relapsing all the time, they need a lot of structure. You just got to think about it as like pillars under a house or beams. If the house is falling over, you just need to add another beam. And this is a higher level. This is a big beam that adds a lot of support. And it's also more cost effective and less disruptive to life than like a 30 or 90 day program. It's something where you can take 2 weeks off of work and go and do this and come back. 30, 60, 90 days, that's pretty hard to maintain anything in your life. So it's a really good, it's a good option. And I refer most people that are still struggling to a 2-week outpatient intensive program rather than a 90-day kind of thing, or inpatient that would be. So just for your reference, there are a few that are around local. They're not San Diego. We don't have any in San Diego yet, but I'll tell you about that. We're working on that in our practice right now. But there's one in LA. There's 2 actually. There's multiple, but these are the ones that we really like the most. The Sexual Recovery Institute in Los Angeles. That's a really good one. They have a really great program. All of the therapists there have been trained by the same people we have been trained by, and they've been doing this for a while. And so that's a really good. It's a really good program that if you've got someone here, because we're working on getting ours launched. That'll happen soon. But that's a good place to go. I have a client there right now, and it's very good, very intense. I had a client go there a few months ago who was struggling really bad. He saw me for 2 years and never got sobriety. He went to this thing and he's been sober for 6 months now. So it just was really, really a great type of program. Center for Healthy Sex, that's another one. They're a little bit more smaller sizes. The SRI is a little bit larger. This one's a little bit smaller. They can tailor make it to each client. And it's a good one as well, Center for Healthy Sex. Now, RCA, we're calling it The Journey. It's going to be based on the Heroic Journey theme, and I'm developing that program, a 2-week intensive at our offices here in Mission Valley. We haven't launched it yet. We're in the developing stages of getting the website up and marketing, things like that. I have a lot of the material put together. But so pretty soon, hopefully in this maybe late spring or summer, we'll be able to launch our first one where you can send guys to us for 2 weeks, and they'll be at a house nearby. We'll rent a house or have a sober living house where people can all stay there together. So people don't go from their houses; they stay all together. So there's community, and then they go to the meetings every day. And we're going to have like equine therapy, so a horse therapy, as well as like outdoor adventure elements, like a high ropes course, and then all the different therapeutic things. But a little bit more outdoor. I'm an outdoorsy person. I think it's better to get in your body, moving around, not just sitting and listening. So we're going to have some of those elements as well. So stay tuned for that. That's in the works right now with RCA. But in the meantime, SRI and Center for Healthy Sex in LA are good options. Questions?
What's the range of cost for this type of program?
Like SRI is a little. Everybody works with you, so it's not all fixed. But I think they're about $12,000. Maybe 14. They do work with insurances through PPOs, so there's some reimbursement there that can happen. Center for Healthy Sex, I believe, without room and board is about $8,000, something like that. And we're kind of working on the price point, but we'll work with people, but $6,000 to $7,000, something like that for a 2-week intensive. And that you're talking if normal therapy is like $140 to $160 an hour. That's actually a pretty good rate for how many hours you're going to be getting. It's a lot of hours. So, but look in the, and normally they'll be about most people are about $8,000 to $15,000 range.
So just some other things. We've touched on these briefly in other talks and workshops, but these are some other issues that come up when people need more care. then typically a support group is going to be able to provide, right? An obvious one is depression. You know, some signs of it, some things you might be seeing would be maybe lack of motivation. I know that's a tough one. You probably have lots of people in your groups that you're thinking, oh, that person's not motivated, that person's not motivated. But this might be overall in lots of areas in their life, not just in their recovery work. Lack of enjoyment in life. You know, things that used to give them pleasure and they used to enjoy doing, they don't really find pleasure in anymore. Maybe they're having sleep issues. They're sleeping way too much. Irritability. They're irritable all the time, and they're not in a withdrawal phase. You know, another obvious one is there's a desire there maybe to hurt themselves or kill themselves. So some big stuff like that for depression. Anxiety. You know, it's often said of anxiety that it drives the bus of addiction, right? There's a lot of anxiety behind compulsions and jump into it and do it. And a lot of sexual addiction helps calm and soothe, right? And so if anxiety's up and elevating someone's kind of energy or mood, then a lot of times sexual addiction can help calm and soothe. At least on the surface is what it looks like it's going to do. So let's see, you know, maybe they're fidgety all the time. They really have a hard time relaxing. You know, they talk about you're you know, talking about outer circle stuff, and you're talking about, you know, those good things that people do in their lives to relax and just be, and they have no idea what you're talking about, and they always have to be doing something, and they can't just sit for a moment. Right? They have a hard time maybe getting into, you know, prayer time or meditations or just any kind of quiet, calm time. And you know, worry, consistent, perpetual worry can be a big indicator of that too. So just some other ones too that I just wanted to note, again, just have on your radar. We're not going too in depth with these. Is PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress syndrome, where maybe there has been some trauma, like Andrew was bringing up, way in the past or even somewhat recently, and that's coming out, and you're seeing maybe they're having nightmares and flashbacks and things like that. OCD comes up sometimes, where there's an obsessive compulsive disorder going on, where someone might have a tendency to check their locks 3 times, or go back and check their garage door to make sure it's shut, or wash their hands, or whatever. Something like that might be coming up that is going to really impact whether or not they're able to be sober. Right? You guys are going to be spinning your wheels if they've got something like that going on, and you're working hard on getting them the right books to read and the right exercises to do, and getting them talking. But if they've got this underneath, it's not going to happen. Bipolar, right? So that's a lot of depression plus a time or two of really high, like, manic episodes that can come up. And sometimes these show up just kind of in everyday talk with everyday people around. Maybe they went on this crazy spending spree, and you kind of do this step back. Wait, how many guitars did you just buy? Or you bought 3 new cars? You hit one of those kind of moments, and you go, whoa, okay, something else is going on here. Borderline. There's borderline narcissistic. There's some deeper personality issues that could be going on too. Borderline is a lot of push-pull, and I like you, I hate you, come close, stay away. That's kind of the easy summary. Narcissism, is very self-absorbed, no empathy at all, and we run into that a lot with addictions. Actually, with sexual addiction, is there's an element of narcissism there that we see a lot. So something to pay attention to, and it's obviously, like I was saying, something that requires some deeper work. If you guys remember this one, when I did the Getting Unstuck talk, it's been a while now, maybe a year ago, I guess. But basically what I'm getting at here too is that there can be multiple addictions going on that are going to influence those neural pathways and impede recovery, right? So it can be things that are somewhat normal. Maybe it's coffee, caffeine. Maybe it's smoking. Maybe it's, it's smoking, that's not that big of a deal compared to we're working on their sexual addiction. And yeah, you might be right. However, it's still going to activate some of those same, actually smoking activates the arousal neural pathways along with a lot of sexual addiction, right? So, so they're not being sexual, but they're smoking, so their arousal neural pathways are elevated higher than they would be just on a normal. well, how do you think that's going to go the next time they're tempted sexually? Well, they've already got the arousal piece up. It's just going to plug it right in. So this was my little thing I pulled from my last presentation, but a quick example is, someone could start their morning with delicious sugary things, as we've enjoyed this morning, and then maybe go to coffee, right? So the sugar's up, coffee's up. Now they're really stressed at work, and they've got a lot hanging over their heads, so now the stress is up. Then maybe they go and they think, oh, I need a smoke break, and that's going to help bring them down. But a lot of people don't realize that actually brings them up again. The down part is maybe just having a moment away from everything. But they're up again, more coffee, up, now feeling really bad, down, stressed again. After work, maybe go grab a drink, because that's going to help. Well, now the alcohol is going to try and bring you down, and that will, right? So you've been up all day, bring that down. But maybe you're down too far, so you try and do something sexual to bring yourself back up. And anyways, it creates this whole dynamic of back and forth that can be going on even outside of just straightforward sexual acting out behaviors. So it's important to get into those kind of conversations with your group members.
Other reasons to refer to therapy is if there's a relational issue with the spouse going on that's pretty intense. Maybe you'll see a dynamic happening between the couple that is just really, it's really hindering the recovery process for your person because there's a huge dynamic going on there. You may even see violence, domestic violence happening. That does happen, as you guys have probably seen with some people that have been betrayed. Partners will get really angry, and domestic violence will happen. So. Yeah, and actually, so relational issues with spouse. Regarding that, just to let you know too, in April 24th, at our practice, there's some flyers right back there by the coffee machine that we're going to do a couples workshop that's called Fresh Beginning. We do it every year. It's a 4-week, every Thursday night from 6:15 to 8 p.m. We do an educational kind of a workshop and interactive with couples or individuals, but it's geared really well for couples in recovery, but individuals are.
If someone's not married, they're definitely welcome.
Yeah, they're definitely welcome, and they'll learn from it. We talk about what sexual addiction is, how it affects the couple, how it affects the individual, what the processes are going on, what recovery looks like, how to get there, and they share a little bit of their story in the group, and they get some interactive exercises, and then beyond that, there's another 10-week series where they go into group therapy with us, and they join a group. So this is called Fresh Beginning, and it's in April. So if you got couples that you're seeing an individual in your group, and you think they need a little couples support, it's not therapy per se, but it gets them exposed to us, exposed to what recovery looks like, how it affects couples, or an individual who just needs some more understanding about it. It's a good thing to recommend them to. It's $50 a week for an individual and $90 for a couple. So
and oftentimes this is a good way to introduce a spouse into treatment.
Yeah.
As well. A lot of you ask, and we have problems with it too, where it's like, okay, how do we get the spouse to start doing some stuff, because she or he can really be helped out by some more in-depth. And this is one that a lot of times spouses will jump on board and go, oh yeah, I could go to a class once a week, and I get to make you squirm if I go and put you on the spot. Oh sure.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times partners will say, hey, I don't know what's going on in your recovery. You're not telling me much about it. I don't understand. So it's a good way for them to get introduced to what recovery looks like and just feel a part of it. So in April 24th, that's going to start. So you can get one of the flyers out back. You can call us to get enrolled in those classes, or people in your group. So take some flyers, give them to people in your group who might need them, please. Next thing would be therapeutic disclosures necessary. So maybe you have someone in your group who has not disclosed to their partner what they've done. Maybe they have some serious behaviors that are just secret, and how are they going to ever get past this in their marriage, get past it in their life if they have secrets? Because we know that you're only as sick as your secrets, right? Recovery is about being authentic and open and transparent. And so, but sometimes it's not advisable to say, hey, just go tell your wife about what you've been doing. Well, she's not ready for that. Doesn't have support. So we do also recommend a therapeutic disclosure, where actually one of our therapists will work with a male addict, one of our female therapists will work with the partner, or vice versa if it's a female addict, and then we'll actually do some preparation for that, both of them getting prepared, knowing it's coming, and then have them come together in a session for a couple hours and have it all laid out. But do it in a structured way so that, and that there's support afterwards. They know they're going to go to your group afterwards. They're going to call their sponsor. They're going to call their friend. Have it all set up so someone's not just blindsided when they're going to bed one night. Oh, by the way, I need to tell you something, and it just destroys them. And also people often have what we call a staggered disclosure. They'll tell, oh, I just do this. This is what I do. And then, oh, actually, no, it's more like this and this. Oh, actually, no, it's more like this and this and this. And the partner gets really traumatized because they can't trust you anymore. You've told them 3 different, things. So we like to do it all at once in a really structured way. So a therapeutic disclosure is a really important aspect that if you need help with that, please send them to us or someone else who specializes in this, because that really is key for setting up long-term recovery for the couple. Also, family affected. How to talk to your children about this, or how people in your groups could talk to their children. It's a hard conversation, and how to do it, what ages are appropriate and all that, how much to share. So that's also something that you might need a higher level of care for that, for those people in your groups who need to deal with the family situation, and obviously you're not set up to do that in your support group. So we specialize in that as well. Okay, yeah, so one last thing is, like Cory talked about with the S.A.L.T, the sexual addiction screening test, there's it's important to do a proper assessment up front to know, hey, what level of care does this person need? And the S.A.L.T is a good free one for you guys that I highly recommend. We highly recommend. Another option, just to put it out there for you, is that we do a comprehensive assessment package. So maybe you see someone that scored a 15 on the S.A.L.T or something real high, and you realize, okay, this person needs to get some, we really want to get a better understanding of what's going on, and this person wants to know more too as well. We do an assessment, and what we have a test that we have access to as therapists. It's called the Sexual Dependency Inventory. So that's like the S.A.L.T on steroids. It's massive. It asks a bunch of questions, and it helps. It's kind of like taking an X-ray of the addiction. What are the behaviors that are escalated compared to the norms? And it goes through a lot. It looks through their drug history, alcohol use, everything. It goes through every question you could ever imagine. And sometimes it's too invasive. To people, it's like, wow, they're asking me that. But it asks everything. So basically, you can get like 5 groups or 5 sessions worth of content in one test. It's about a 3-hour test. So we do that. Along with there's another test called the Post-Traumatic Stress Index. It's a PTSD test. You can find out if someone really has some serious trauma in their background and where that is especially focused. There's different levels and different types. Another one is the Money, Work, and Spending Inventory. So people may have a sexual addiction, and they may also have a money addiction, how they spend, or debting, or maybe workaholism. There's other things going on beyond just, like Cory was talking about, multiple addictions. And so, if maybe you have someone in your group who you really want to get them a real thorough assessment, you could send them to us. We could do these 3 assessments, and then they could sign a release for us to talk to you as a leader and say, hey, this is what we're seeing, this is what we're dealing with, and they could decide whether they want to do therapy or not. But it might be it's just an extra level of assessment that we can do. That if you guys are interested in that, then you can call us or talk to us, and we can get a more intensive assessment so we can know what level of care does this person really need. So yeah, why that thorough assessment saves time and money and frustration, and it also gets the people started on the proper course from the beginning, which is important. This one here. We know that denial is a big part of the addict's life. How effective are the S.A.L.T and the last tests in assessing or addressing and identifying denial? So basically, is the S.A.L.T and the last good at identifying and breaking through denial? Well, yes and no. It's a self-reporting test, so it's based on the person who took out the test. They can make it sound as good or bad as they want. It's not it's subjective. So, but that being said, if someone honestly answers the test and they didn't really realize how bad it was for them, and they see that, hey, I've scored a 15, wow, this is not just a little bit of a problem, I really am having a bigger problem than I recognize, that can really help break through denial. So I do like to use that along with the other test we talked about, the STI, to say, hey, you've got a problem here and it's significant. So yes, they're very good at breaking through denial if the person's honest.
Yeah. And then sometimes as a therapist, I've had many times where I've interviewed the person for a while, we've worked a little bit, and then they do the S.A.L.T, and they score a lower score than I expect based on what they've been telling me, right? So then I go through the questions with them, and I ask them, you know, before you were telling me this, but here on this question, you said this. I don't understand. What's the difference here? And that helps them then break through the denial and really start admitting exactly who they are and what they really need, right? So it's a good tool that way sometimes. Okay, there are many groups out there. Have you seen any varying levels of success failure with FMO, FWO, Sexaholics Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, Spiritual 12 Steps with EMB? EMB, what is that? What is EMB?
I don't know.
Every man's battle.
Every man's battle, okay. Celebrate recovery. Any contrasts? Well, yeah, I think that there's, if you just take one of these, for example, let's take a look at Sex Addicts Anonymous, SAA, okay? There are groups, and that's just a secular, you might say, group that has groups around the county, okay, that you can pick from. If you just take a look at all those groups and you go to one and you go to the next one, you'll see a varying level of effectiveness from one group to another. Okay, that's just because of the human factor, right? There are a lot of, just looking at the Christian groups for a minute around the county, there are a lot of really great leaders represented in this room and even people that aren't here that are doing really good work with individual people in support groups that use slightly varying, curriculums and so forth, and they're doing really good work. So the leader and the structure of the group is really a very important factor in how effective the group is in ministering to the individuals that come. So that's why, really, from some years ago, that we started leadership training, and here we are with S.A.L.T, because we really want to just give into and bless your lives and have you guys bless us as well, so that we can all become better. I don't have a singular favorite, but I will say that many years ago, 8 years ago, when I did the original training, and Rich and Kurt was part of that group of about 13 guys or so, where we spent 6 months together every Monday night, most every Monday night over that period of time. That prior to that, I looked at everything, and I decided that I wanted to utilize the FMO curriculum as a part of that training and to encourage that, okay? But there's other really great groups as well. You mentioned Celebrate Recovery here. Not, as you probably know, not every Celebrate Recovery program in the county, typical Celebrate Recovery programs in the county, it's a 2-hour deal. The first hour, everybody's together, they worship, they have a speaker, and then the second hour or so, they split up into groups, and then they break down groups into maybe a men's addiction group, a women's codependent group, maybe a women's addiction group, etc. And some of those, not all of them, but some of those Celebrate Recovery groups, ministries in the county, also break down and will have a specific men's sexual addiction group, but not all of them do. The key is that if you go to a Celebrate Recovery group, that we really, as a person, for me, I would only encourage someone to go to a Celebrate Recovery group if they're a sex addict, if they can go to a small group where there's a men's sexual addiction component and it's not just mixed in with other addicts. Okay? So that's it. That's all I have to say about it.
I had a couple questions here regarding the S.A.L.T again. Somebody was asking what's the minimum age and is it appropriate for teens? They've been working on one that's even more appropriate for teens, but yes, it can be used with teens. It does have very adult questions, about sexual activity and implied relationships, spouses, that kind of stuff. So it's not, again, worded for teens, but it can very accurately test as well. And sometimes that'll be, like Aaron was mentioning, doing kind of a paper version. Sometimes I'll do that in my office too, is I'll have the paper version and go through it with them just so that I get more of a sense. It's more about going through the questions than it is finding a number for them. Another quick S.A.L.T one I'll do is somebody was saying they've taken the S.A.L.T and they're wondering how, if you answer the questions as you are now, say you're in recovery and doing great, do you answer based on how you are right now, or do you answer based on, hey, has it always been, for the life of you and your addiction? And the answer is really, and this is good for you to be able to help your group members, is you want them answering with this blanket statement of it's always been, ever since the beginning of time, kind of a deal, not so much here's where I am now. Because the goal with it isn't to try and find a decreasing number and, okay, you can leave recovery when you get down to a 5. That's not the goal, is to try and get there. The goal is to go, hey, yes, you admit maybe, or you don't, but that you're a sex addict. Let's figure out where on that range you are. And yeah, if you're in recovery and you see it go down, you could take it that way. Just it's more for fun though, more for to see, oh, hey, where am I scoring now? But typically you want to answer those questions from the beginning.
I'll just say this too, with our more comprehensive assessment, the SDI, when we're all in the program, the national certification program by Carnes, to become even better at doing what we do, right? But as part of that, we're required to take the SDI as individuals, right? So when I took mine, and they encouraged us to do this, just go answer the questions as if you are a sex addict, or you were a sex addict, depending on how you view that, answer it back as you would have when you were in the midst of your worst addiction, all right? And when I did that, it was interesting because I had a lot of recovery at that point, but I did it, and as I went through my the results, I learned a key important point, a part of some deeper underlying issues in regards to fantasy that I hadn't put together yet, even after all these years. And it was really good for me to do that. So it's really good for you guys and for the guys you're working with. Take it and just take it as if you're taking it, that S.A.L.T, when you're at the worst part of your recovery, and see how the Lord's going to speak to you through it.
I have another question here that says, are the intensive programs all Christ-centered at all? Will RCAs be Christian-based? So the ones I talked about, SRI and Center for Healthy Sex, no, they're not Christian-based. They do all kind of do the 12-step thing, which is your higher power, whatever that may be. So no, those are not. The one we're doing is, yes, that'll be Christian-based. So that's one of the unique elements that's why I thought we needed to develop that here, because there's really nothing in California, nothing in Southern California that I know of that's this intensive outpatient program for sex addiction that's Christian-based. So we're going to be a Christian-based one. We're not going to be using what's the materials? The 12.
Pure Desire?
Yeah, Pure Desire. We're not going to be using that though. We're going to be using Patrick Carnes's Facing the Shadow material, which isn't Christian-based, but we're going to be having a lot of different Christian elements as a part of that. So another one is so this is a question from a spouse, or a spouse directed, with a partner that has an 18 on their S.A.L.T score, and maybe have had 3 or 4 years of support. Wouldn't it be a good idea that the co-addict or the spouse use an in and outpatient, an in or outpatient intensive as a part of their safety plan. So basically, a spouse who says, "Hey, my partner's got an 18 on their test, and I'm making a safety plan, setting boundaries for myself at the certain levels of, hey, you know, you've been in recovery for this long, you're still not doing well. You need, part of our plan, our agreement would be that you go to an intensive outpatient program or an inpatient program to say, that's my boundary, and if you don't want to do that, then I guess I'm going to have to leave you." Or that's sometimes the boundary that has to be drawn is, I'm done unless you decide to up your level of support. So you don't have to live, for the spouses, you don't have to live with an ongoing addiction forever. I think healthy boundaries, and that would be a good one. Healthy boundary would say, you need to up the level of care and get into an intensive program.
So this is a really practical question for everybody in groups. It says, if people are not ready to take the recommended levels of support, what is the appropriate response? Do you allow them to stay in the group, or do you give grace? You know, what do you guys do? So, you know, I think for all of us up here, recognizing the, like in your talk, the stuck individual, like what do we do with them if we've recommended, hey, there's an extra level of support you need to take, what do we do with that? And I think Andrew had a good point when he was talking about motivational interviewing, like really getting to this person, like, okay, well, we've kind of recommended this stuff, and so what do you want to do, and how does this fit with your life goals as far as, you know, interacting with this specific person in the group? Also, probably beforehand in the group, if you've already established, like, here's kind of the way that goes and the rules, and if we're not, I don't want to say rules, but guidelines for how our groups go, and if there are people who are not taking the recommended steps, maybe we already have something in place that we've already decided as a group and as maybe a leader and co-leader, this is the steps we're going to take. And also, I would really encourage you guys in your networking time here with everybody, talk to each other about your different groups and what do you do with this, because this is a tough question. So.
One thing that just kind of more of a therapist side of things that I found interesting that I don't necessarily do, but some therapists that really do good work with sexual addiction, they'll tell clients, hey, up front, if you're not pulling your weight, you're fired. I'm going to fire you, which is, you know, I'm going to say you need to find someone else because you're not obviously, you know, doing what I'm asking you. So I'm not saying you guys do that, but I've heard and I've respected people that do it that way because it really makes the person say, I'm going to go all in and commit, or I'm going to have to leave. And it can be an effective approach. It's a real hard approach, but you know, there's real, you know, as we know, hard boundaries in recovery can be really effective.
You know, what I've been struck with interacting with some of the national leaders of support groups, Christian ministries, you know, like those of you represented here. When I've asked this question about, you know, that we're addressing here, what do you do with a guy that's stuck and is just perpetually relapsing, or a woman that, you know, isn't getting it, whatever the case might be? I've been struck, these guys that have been at it for a long time, and they're grace-oriented guys. You know, it's not some rigid guy that's not the kind of guys that I hang out with anyway to get wisdom from. But I've been struck by just how direct they are with guys in their groups, and they just say, look, you're just not ready. You know, when you're just not really ready to make the decisions you need to make, and so we'd like to have you take a 2-month break from the group and just do some thinking it through, and then I'm going to call you, or you're going to call me, and we're going to get back together and just see where you are at that time. And that is very likely God speaking to them. Okay, it's there's nothing wrong with that. And so if they're not willing to make the step to a higher level of care, they're not you know, they're just not ready, then
Well, they're not doing the homework or any of the stuff you're assigning.
right. So those are you know, sometimes that feels like really scary for us as leaders, or harsh as leaders, and you know, just read the gospel, okay? Just read how Jesus approached things. You know, he's when the big crowds came, that wasn't what he was looking for. He was looking for people that were really ready to follow him. He's, you know, look, I don't even have a place to lay my head at night. Are you sure you want to follow me? So it wasn't necessarily easy to be a disciple, right? So, all right.
Let's say I have one more question. Will RCA's, the Journey program, eventually provide services for women? I forgot to mention that we will have a spousal intensive as a part of that, so like a mini intensive on the weekend, a Saturday, Sunday. Spouses can come. There'll be a couples element on the Saturday where there'll be a whole couples intensive, and then on Sunday will be just for the spouses, for the women. So that's what we have in place already. We could do the program for women addicts if we had the numbers. It's often hard to get up 8 women who really want to be in recovery, to do that. But we do have the availability to do that. But right now, it's focused on men because there's a lot more out there. But we definitely have the spousal component and the couples component.
And we're open to developing other things, for wives themselves, if their husband is not open to coming, that co-addicts, So we're open to all those things, but this made sense as a place to start.
All right, that's it.
We do have one more, I guess, here, that was just brought up. How do we as leaders, men's group, encourage the wives to attend FWO? Many of the times the wives or girlfriends' attitudes are, no, I'm not the one with the problem, you are. Do the ladies in the room, do you recognize that
Yes.
women say that too?
Yes.
Yeah, at times that's what they say, right? And at times, just the reverse is true. The wives go into a group and the husbands won't face their addiction and they say, I don't have a problem, you do. Okay? So this isn't just one way. But this is often the case. I've sat in therapy a number of times with guys, and they want to tell me all of that, and I say, look, you can't force her to do something, but and I get really specific about where they are in their recovery. I said, if you really begin to start doing something different, not just changing your behavior, but changing the deeper issues in your life, and you become the kind of man that is able to connect with her more deeply, and you really love her in a healthier way, if you really work towards that, then things are going to start changing in your relationship. Or maybe you're going to put some pressure in the relationship where she's going to need some help, and she's going to feel the need herself to get some help. And then that's how God is going to do this. But just kind of top-down approach. Hey, you got to go to this. I don't know. I don't know if that's ever really worked for anybody. Right? Okay.
Also, again, just the Fresh Beginning group that we have coming up in April is again a reminder, another great way of getting both partners involved because it's kind of neutral ground. They're both going to learn. And we have a good amount of success because we run into the same thing all the time with our individual clients is, okay, how do I get my spouse to start doing some stuff? And a lot of times something like this, they feel, oh yeah, I could go to that, we could go to that.
Meeting that we come to, and we're from Skyline Church. I'm Tony Alvarado, and this is my wife, Cheryl. And like I said, we attend Skyline Church. What's that?
That's your daughter.
Oh.
Anyway.
Well,
Our mom. Yeah, I'll introduce you.
So I'm part of the Unleashed Warriors group at Skyline. That's what we call ourselves. And we meet on Thursdays. And I've been attending that group probably, it's been November of 2011. So you guys can do the math. And at that point, we had just, my wife and I had just gotten married in July. And she has the gift of discernment. And we went to the premarital counseling, and we went through an assessments test for compatibility, so to speak. And it was a questionnaire that had like 175 questions on it. It took me like an hour and a half, to finish through that. And we met with some a mentoring couple. And that was my opportunity to go ahead and divulge my sexual addiction. But of course, never even being introduced to being a sex addict or to the screening test. you know, that never really entered my mind. The issues about finances and corporal punishment and our views on subjects like that, I could answer, you know, very easily. And we had been dating, doing group dating through our singles group for about 2 years. So we knew a little bit about each other in those kinds of events. But when it came down to those kind of questions, and you know, the last one was, you know, is there anything that's not on this questionnaire that you're willing to discuss, you know, or bring up? And again, you know, I had that opportunity to bring my sexual addiction into play, and I never did. So the day before our honeymoon came a little bit later, you know, 3 months later. And we were going to go on a cruise to Mexico, 7 days, and there was something that was bugging my wife up to that point, you know, from July to November, and you know, I kept saying no, it's there's nothing wrong, there's nothing that I really need to say, and so finally she said, I really sense, you know, the Lord is telling me something, and that you need to tell me. So, you know, either you tell me or we're not going on the honeymoon. So, you know, I had a choice. You know, that was like the turning point for me. You know, do I disclose, you know, and take a risk, you know, which addicts don't like doing, and be honest, you know, this is basically going to dictate how my marriage is going to go. And so I decided to fully disclose to her. And I had actually been sober for about 1.5 years, you know, no masturbation, no pornography, nothing like that. So I felt that I was in a good place to disclose, but you know, I'd never had any of the training or anything that I have now. But I went ahead, you know, and told her everything, and she was very good at setting, you know, where to start, and she somewhere had gotten the information about making a timeline. So, you know, we went through that timeline from, you know, infancy to where I am now, and I was able to disclose each of those sections to her, and really discover how my addiction had come about. And so, you know, it was bittersweet. You know, that was a big turning point of my life and for our marriage. And so when we got back from the honeymoon, I started going to Unleash Warriors at Skyline. I knew the guy that ran that Skyline, that started that Skyline, and he was close friends with Aaron. And so he had been running it for about 2 years, but I never really knew what that was about. But I was glad that I was friends with him, so when I approached him and said, you know, I need to be in this class, you know, he was pretty welcoming. And then about 6 to 9 months later, you know, he asked me whether I wanted to lead a different group, and because that group was growing. And so I felt that I was in a healthy place to do that. And I had led small groups before, about 5 of them at Skyline. So I knew some of the pitfalls, but you know, this was going to be totally different, a different group. But I decided to say yes, you know, and now I lead 1 of 4, or 1 of 3, and I'm excited to announce that. You know, I've been asking the guys in my group. There's actually 8 of us in my group, to go ahead and pray each time that they sit down to eat, to send more men. And you know, the Lord's been faithful, because in the last 2 weeks we gotten 6 men, and so we're up to 30, and we're talking about expanding and getting a leader for our 4th group. So I'm excited about that.
So I was thinking about the group, and you know, you always hear the saying, if you want the real fruit, you gotta go out on a limb. if you're going to have a class, you got to see your fruit prosper. So I'm like, okay, Lord, this is the last thing I want to do. So I went ahead and, being an obedient daughter, at one point I said, yes, Lord, use me in any way, capacity. So that came easy, and then till I met S.A.L.T. 2 years ago to date, I was able to focus in on me. And I had discovered that I'm a sex addict, and I've been on the other side of the coin of betrayal. So I'm a very special daughter of the King, and I have a lot to offer with that. And with that, I pass my baton on to Julie. And Julie is now leading the group, and the tree is full of fruit. We have probably close to, if everyone was to show, 20 people. So we did a little experiment. We said, let's take the groups together and see if that would mingle. Well, it didn't. And I knew it wouldn't, but I wanted to test the waters because, you know, Peter did too. So as I tested those waters, the women felt condemned walking into a group of betrayal, the victims or the co-addicts, as they feel sometimes. So we played with that, had some fun, won't do it again, unless God leads us to do it again. My group, unfortunately, women, the curse of Eve, it's hard for them to ask for help more than men. Because the women will set boundaries where the men won't. You need to get help. Thank you, Lord, I finally got a lady that is only 23 years old, and she is desperate for help. And it just is exciting for me because here I get to pour in my 15 years of sex addiction into this wonderful born-again Christian, 1 year old, 1 year baby born again. And then thinking at the same time, well, I'll never do it again because I'm a Christian, I'm beyond that. And then for 2 years, 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, I relapsed. But I'm a Christian. So I just want you to know, it's just wonderful what God's doing at the Skyline, and I really feel in my heart there's a revival coming for this. And everybody's seeking it, whether you're Christian or not, and that's the awesome thing. Bring on everybody. And this is Julie.
I'm Julie, and I have the most fortunate job from God to teach this class. And I always say I'd rather teach a class on horsemanship than sexual addiction because I love horses. But this is where God has placed me, and it's been an extraordinary journey. I've been married for 28 years. I had no idea that my husband was a sex addict. It just popped up one day. He's a pilot, and he was on a trip, and I went looking for something, and I found his second life. And I had no idea who this man was that I was married to. I was horrified. And I know we've asked a lot today about how do you get a wife to go into this class. And the way I got to this class was that my husband said, I'm going to this class. And I'm going to go because I'm sick and I need some help. And just knowing this man that I've been married to for so long, I loved him. I love him. And I had no idea that my love would extend into the sexual addiction, but it does. And that's the hope that I want to bring to all the women, to say that if you're married and you really want to stay married and your husband is showing some effort, just give it a shot. Just give it a try and see if there's some hope that you're going to find, because I look at the women in my class, and they come in like I did. This is his problem, and he has put such a tremendous burden on me, I'm never going to be able to recover. My brain has changed, I don't feel the same. And then all of a sudden you start to do this work, and you go, wow, this addiction is not his choice. His brain has changed. It made me understand, and this is what I think is a revelation for women. You just understand that he can't stop, because I can't tell you how many times I went, just stop this behavior. why don't you just stop it? Because he couldn't. But I didn't understand that, because until I came to this training and until I did the book, and I've now been through the class a third time, and this is the first time I'm leading it, I had some compassion for the man I love. And I didn't hate him. And I saw that maybe I can be married for 55 years.
Praise God.
And I'm so blessed, and I'm so motivated, because I want God to show other women that there's hope in Him. And I just want to say one other thing. Thank you, men, for standing up, because for me, being up here as a woman who's been betrayed, and I hear you and I see you, you encourage me. So thank you for being leaders. Thank you for standing up. And I pray that you fight the good fight to the bitter end. So that's it.